Okay, right. The next big idea is this question of this what they're asking us to do here to calculate the contribution sales ratio. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come out of this and just come back to my slides to just kind of illustrate a bit more what is actually going on over here. Now, yes, here we are. So I'm just going to start talking about this. I sort of highlighted it earlier on, but let's look at an example. I highlighted it when I talked about typically thinking about selling more than one product, because ultimately this is where this is going. And you're selling more than one product. Imagine in your shop, your product A, product B, but they could be, think of a food shop. I always like, I think I use the example of Greggs, and you're selling sausage rolls, if you like donuts, whatever. Now you know that if you're thinking about your fixed cost that you have to pay, ultimately you want the product that gives you the, if you like, the highest contribution margin, or I guess the other term we once used to refer to this as when we were doing financial accounting was the gross profit margin. So you want the product that brings in the highest contribution, because ultimately that's it, right? You can make something for £50, and if it's going to bring you 60, you're only ultimately keeping 10. It's really about what you're keeping as opposed to what you're selling something for. I mean, of course, if you increase this to 70, you're keeping 20. So, of course, that's critical. But the key point is, what are you keeping? And we want to ultimately arrive at the product that we're keeping the most, if you like, so that we can shift that to cover. We are more likely to arrive at fixed cost early, as opposed to selling a popular product, for example. But if it's only bringing in very little margin, then there's no point. Right. So I just want to use this example here, just so you see where I'm going. First of all, to show you why, as a ratio, it is a constant ratio. When I say a constant ratio over a number of products. So here I use the example of you selling a pair of shoes. Selling a pair of shoes, and you literally buy the shoes, if you like, from a middleman, or the manufacturers at a contract cost of 40, and you're able to sell it for 100, you're making a contribution of 60. So as a percentage of your revenue, your contribution over sales, or your contribution over revenue, if you like, is, so where am I saying for every 100 you're keeping 60? And we think about this, if you remember, from our gross profit margin language. So when we talk about revenue and we talk about variable cost, we're saying 100, and we have variable cost of 40, and we have a contribution of 60. And this gives us what we would refer to as a contribution to sales ratio of 60%. Now, I extend this and say, okay, listen, what if you're selling 2 pairs of shoes? If you're selling 2 pairs of shoes, you now have 100, then you have 200. And of course, you take away the variable cost of 40, that leaves you with a contribution of 60. Here we have 200, variable cost of 80, leaving you with a contribution of 120. So 2 pairs of shoes cost 80, we sell both pairs for 200. This leaves us with a contribution of 120. Therefore, C over S ratio is, in this scenario, 120 divided by 200, which is still 60%. 60%. So we can see here that it doesn't really matter how many shoes we sell. The ratio of contribution to revenue is fixed, because the truth is they're both variable, right? An increase in our assumptions with output in the same sort of, there's no change. We're always selling at 100, and the cost is always 40, so it doesn't really matter how many we sell. So this is a useful ratio to know and to have, because we can then we can start tweaking. Like I say, we can start thinking about the number of products, because different products that we sell will bring us different C over S ratios, right? I mean, I might be selling shoes here, but I might also be selling bags or t-shirts, and then if I can look at the C over S ratios of all these different products, I can start to make decisions, right? Okay, great. So I now kind of go the full way and tell you you're selling 50 pairs of shoes, you have a revenue of 5,000, variable cost of 2, contribution of 3, and therefore the C over S ratio is 0.6 again, isn't it? 3,000 divided by 5,000, giving you 0.6. So I kind of finish off here telling you the C over S ratio is constant. This means that if you're given the ratio, you can find the other. So really, what are we doing now? We're walking into this world of now making certain decisions. Now, I mentioned earlier on that at break even, fixed costs are equal to contribution, right? I mean, that's just what it is. We've confirmed that. And in this example, if you're told that the ratio of contribution to revenue is 16, the issue here is that your worry is always about breaking even. Now, if you were making the one product and prices never changed, we could argue that you can talk in units. You can say, I just need this number of units to break even. But the truth is, if you're selling different products, you're not really interested about the units per se. Well, the question is, you don't, I mean, in your head, imagine, do you start saying, okay, I need this number of units, this number? No. You just think, what break-even revenue do I need to make sure I cover my fixed costs? So you start speaking in break-even revenue language. You start saying, what's the revenue I need to break even? So the question here is that, well, if I know what the, if you like, break-even contribution is, well, I can find break-even revenue if I have the ratio of contribution to, if you like, to revenue. You see, because ultimately we know that at break-even, fixed costs are equal to contribution. So if I know what fixed costs are, well, I can tell you what the contribution break-even is straight away, irrelevant of the number of products I'm selling, because I must cover my fixed costs. And if I have kept good records and I can see clearly the contribution to sales margin and compare that over different products and find some kind of average, well, I'm there. So imagine I'm given contribution, and contribution is equal to, I'm just using this as before I talk about fixed costs, but contribution is 5,000. I know the C over S ratio. Well, if C over S is equal to 0.6 and you're given C, that means that 5,000 over S is equal to 0.6. Therefore, S is equal to 5,000 divided by 0.6, and therefore S is equal to 5,000 divided by 6, and that's 5,000 divided by 0.6 gives us, technically 5,000 divided by 0.6 is 8,333 or whatever it is. But the key point here is that I'm not even trying to find the answer in this case. I'm just trying to prove a formula. S is equal to 5,000 divided by 0.6, but we know that 0.6 is, if you like, the C over S ratio, because we're given. So what you see is that you'll see a lot of textbooks giving you a formula that break-even revenue is equal to fixed costs, divided by the C over S ratio. But in effect, it's not a formula, really. Again, I keep wanting to throw out the word formula. Ultimately, I'm just highlighting the fact that at break-even, fixed costs are equal to contribution. And I've just kind of worked it out from here, ultimately, to arrive at this. So we'll see. I'm sure, of course, we'll see examples as we go along. But this is really important. This understanding the reasoning behind this, wanting to know what the C over S ratios are for products, ultimately. Because if we know one thing, we can find the other, right? And so I kind of highlighted here, the next important thing to be happy with is that as much as we want to know how many units, we also want to know what break-even revenue is. And we know the break-even fixed costs are equal to contribution. So in my example here with my shoes, I have here, imagine fixed costs with 3,000, then profits would be 0. I can see straight away that fixed costs are always equal to contribution. So This means that if I'm given a C over S ratio and I'm given fixed costs, I can find break even. I can find break even revenue. I can find break even revenue. Right, good. And in that scenario, I mean, just looking at this in this scenario here, the C over S ratio, of course, is 3,000 over 5,000, right? Which is equal to 0.6. Now, if I know, if for example, in any exam, if they tell you, oh, fixed cost of 3,000 and the C over S ratio is 0.6, what is the break-even revenue? Well, it must be, right? Because I know that C over S is equal to 0.6. I know that at break-even, C is equal to the fixed costs given to me. It just is, right? Because profits are zero. Contribution minus fixed cost is zero, so that means the contribution is equal to fixed cost. So it means that 3,000 over S is equal to 0.6. That means that S is equal to 3,000 over 0.6, and that means that this is equal to 5,000. So in effect, this thing now looks like this. Fixed costs divided by C over S ratio. I mean, that's what it is. 3,000 is my fixed cost. 0.6 is my C over S ratio. This is equal to break-even revenue. So there we are. We've gone from sort of we've deduced, if you like, the break-even formula. So very quickly, just end this video. Let me just go back and answer that particular question, and then we'll hold there and then do the. Sorry, let's just come back here. Let's just answer that question. Oops. Where did that? Sorry. Oh, yes, right. I had the original question that we had. Right, where is it gone? Right, the page I was using to discuss this has just quietly disappeared. Right, let me just see if I can find that. 1 second. Okay, no, because I want to show you that page, the actual question sheet we were working with. That is surreal how that suddenly disappeared. Wait, I will find it because I need to. That's the page I am working on. No, let me just go to my desktop and pull that off. Yeah, here we are. You can sort of see it. Sort of finish with that. Yes, the question. I mean, the question does say calculate the. Here we are, the C over S ratio for this question. You can see here they're giving you some kind of formula, some kind of way to look at it, and that's contribution, C over S contribution over sales. In this question, we are told that very quickly, in this question we're told, if you remember, you had 25 for the revenue, and you had 20, and then you had 5. So the C over S ratio ultimately was 5 over 25, right? And so this is 1 over 5, which leaves you 0.2. So in this question, the C over S ratio is 0.2. Great stuff, awesome. And I will see you in the next question.